Hey, I'm Felissa Rose, and you're watching Keto and Crime.
Welcome everybody to Thought Crime and Keto and Crime. For those of you on YouTube and VidShoot, we are back with my good friend Michelle.
Hi.
Hi. We're going to tackle what we think is a very relevant topic.
Almost too relevant.
Yeah, very, very relevant. The Spanish flu of 1918.
Yes.
The most deadly pandemic
Has
thus far.
To do with Spain.
No, it has nothing to do with Spain, and people are even controversial whether it was actually influenza.
Well, so I actually have some information about that.
Cool. Well,
that we can get to later.
Cool. Well, actually, that's what I'm going to do a part one to this. So if you've clicked on this, hopefully you've watched part one where I kind of give a general overview of the whole Spanish flu saga. And now we're just going to discuss it because we've both been doing a lot of research.
Yes.
On this.
So before we get started, I re-listened to the very first episode of a podcast called This Podcast Will Kill You, which is an excellent podcast that
it is.
I recommend about all things infectious. And it's fun to listen to, but also incredibly informative. And so it was good. I was able to re-listen to that. It's been maybe a year or so since I had listened to the episode about influenza and specifically the pandemic of 1918. So yeah. Yeah,
I kind of did the same thing. I rewatched History Extra's brilliant 6-part animated series on it. I'm going to link everything we're talking about. I will link below so that you can check them out because they deserve a lot of credit for the research they put in. I also read some books, and I took a Great Courses Plus course on the pandemic, which was very, very interesting. The authority on it, a microbiologist at Tulane University, taught it, so I learned a lot there as well.
Well, that's considerably more than I did.
No. It was don't think it was a 3 30-minute courses. It wasn't like
okay, well,
5 years of my life.
Still. Yeah. Well, cool. Where do we even begin? At the beginning?
At the beginning. I think let me jump into a little bit of the history, and then we'll get into the epidemiology of it and the science of it. All right. So this was up until, hopefully it will remain, the most deadly pandemic ever. It killed an estimated 675,000 people in the United States.
Yes.
And estimates of upwards of 100 million people worldwide. Now, this was when the population of the world was about half of what it is now.
Right.
So this was a huge
percentage. It says between 50 and 100 million deaths, which seems like a huge range, but as I think we're discovering now, it's harder than you would think to really estimate those things, and even to be sure of deaths, because as people die, could have been this. Does it,
Right, I see that every day in the COVID count. I mean, people withdraw deaths too because they realize, they actually died of a heart attack, but was the heart attack as a result of a complication from having this? I mean, we don't know. It's the same then. I mean, we may have twice the many people walking around with the big vid as we think we do, because testing is still not being done regularly all over the country and the world.
The false negative rate on the tests that we do have is still significant.
Right. This is the 5-day test now. Abbott Labs has come out with the 5-minute test.
That's actually more accurate, weirdly.
More accurate, yeah. And they're shipping 50,000 units a day, but we haven't seen any widespread testing with it just yet. Hopefully it's coming.
Well, considering that it's brand new, we're doing our best.
But like the Spanish flu, they didn't really have an adequate test either. This was before biology was a thing. They had identified bacteria, but not viruses
We
yet.
were still like germ theory was still newish.
Right.
I mean, this is before we had like all sorts of stuff. Also, about the way that you became a doctor in 1918 was like, if you had enough money to go to medical school, then you could be a doctor, and your medical school training was like you oftentimes would never see a patient the whole time that you were in school.
It was all classroom and lab. And
so, believe it or not, that led to, not great doctoring happening at the time.
But luckily we had Dr. Walsh, who, I don't know if you read about him, but he was the founder of Johns Hopkins Medical School. He started promoting the use of microscopes. He actually was instrumental in the founding of the Rockefeller Institute, which was the chief infectious disease study.
Why are none of them named after him?
I don't know. J.D. Rockefeller probably gave all the money.
Bullshit.
But anyway, he was alive and well during this and fighting the pandemic, and he is credited with turning, quote unquote, America from a nation of country doctors into a powerhouse of scientific knowledge. And it was him that really promoted the use of microscopes and research. And he led the charge in the fight against this pandemic.
Good for him. Yeah. More things should be named after him.
Yes, I think so. I think so too.
And he should probably be up there in like the pantheon of knowledge that we all kind of have about other doctors. About like Louis Pasteur, and about
the Dr. Koch in Germany, the Koch Institute. But somehow, instead of it being the Walsh Institute, it became the Rockefeller Institute.
And who is Johns Hopkins?
He was one of the founders of Johns Hopkins Medical School.
No, I know, but why isn't it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't get off into maybe I will get off into a side analysis of why more things aren't named Walsh.
All I'm saying is that you said you did a lot of research on this, and you don't have a single answer to my questions. About this one specific man and why things aren't named after him, even though they probably should be.
I'm sure it comes down to his business partners had the money, and he had the know-how. Is how it all.
You know what? Nerds always getting the short end of the stick.
They do. They do.
Every time. Always. Stupid. Anyway.
So the first inklings of this disease happened in 1915 in France, where we had a little bit of an upper respiratory outbreak in France, nothing much. And then it kind of subsided. And then later on in 1917, because the source of this outbreak is still widely disputed.
It sure is.
The first was a outbreak of respiratory illness in China, as it always tends to be somehow. And China was actually neutral during World War I, which was just ramping up during this time. But Japan decided they were going to threaten China with invasion. And China decided, okay, neutrality is not working out for us. We're going to join the Allies so that we can give Japan the middle finger. But we're not going to fight. We're going to support the Allied troops. So basically, via Canada, a bunch of Chinese laborers were sent across Canada, all sick with a respiratory illness that had caused about a quarter of them to become quarantined. About 10% of them died in the trek across Canada to Halifax, where they were sent into Europe to dig trenches and do support work for the Allied forces. Now, some of these laborers had already been in Canada working on the railroad, as they also did here in the United States. And then I got into some political discussion. They make constricted labor sound so nice these days. How flowery it is. But these poor Chinese laborers were the first reported sick with a respiratory infection that could have helped bring it into Europe. Also, you had an outbreak in the spring of 1918, March of 1918, actually, in Haskins County, Kansas.
Yeah, Haskell, Kansas. So that was Dr. Loring Minor.
Yep.
Starts to notice that young men are becoming very, very ill.
Yep.
With what seems to be influenza.
Yep. And he suspected it was a swine flu because of the large amount of pig farms that inhabited that area.
Yes. I believe that we can talk about that later.
and then the fun spread to Camp Funston, Kansas.
Yeah. Yes, I've got that here. And then it said, my notes say, and then out. And then there's just arrows pointing in all directions.
Because that was the major training hub for American troops during World War I, one of the major ones. And approximately 10% of the camp became infected with this disease, which looked like flu, acted like flu, smelt like flu, everything flu. But the military, because we had just entered World War I, didn't want to not send troops. So we sent all these sick soldiers across the United States, and we put about 2,000 of them on a ship, a converted luxury liner converted to warship called the Leviathan, which we packed them in tight and sent them across. It became a death ship.
Of course.
They buried a lot of troops at sea.
I want to know, there's so many lessons as I was learning about this that we clearly did not learn.
Yep.
One of them being that large boats are floating petri dishes.
Yeah.
Floating petri dishes.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're there for military or if you're there to like drink pina coladas and shop on a boat. It's a floating petri dish. They're disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever go on a cruise.
I want to go on a Disney cruise so bad, but I think I'm going to say no.
You can just go to Disney.
Just go to Disney World.
Just go to Disney World and then have a boat ride in Florida.
I'll go to Pirates of the Caribbean. I'll be fine.
There it is, Disney cruise. Boom.
Yeah.
Well, that's done. I'm glad we figured that out. But so I have had like regular flu before, and it is no joke. It's really shitty. You get very ill. The thought of being even more ill than that, and then being like put on a boat and traveling on said boat for a while.
Yeah.
Like, I had to do a long car trip real hungover before, and that was terrible. I can't even imagine having the flu on a boat for
I've been in that same boat
a month or whatever,
times, so to speak.
Figurative boat.
But the thing of it is, the people on this boat, the sailors on this boat, became so sick, and the medical staff got sick. So they were literally people laying everywhere. A bunch of sailors actually mutinied because they didn't want to go be sent down below because they were well. They wanted to stay up on the deck away from the petri dish. And they actually mutinied against the captain, saying they would not go below. And they said they were burying troops at sea. By the time they got there, half of the 2,000 people on the boat were ill. 10% had died and were buried at sea, and about another 10% of them died once they reached France.
That is a huge percentage.
Yeah, it wasn't. And think of it as they were having symptoms that had never been seen before with the flu. They were hemorrhaging from their eyes, their ears, their nose. It was like hemorrhagic fever and Ebola united with the flu. And I'm thinking that was because of the viral load, maybe. Although there are some other theories as to why the flu acted like it did at this particular time, but I'm thinking,
I don't have notes about that. But so the thing about the flu in general is that you're contagious before you start to feel sick, which is part of why it spreads so fast and it's like so easy to get. So even if you throw a bunch of seemingly well people onto a boat who've been exposed to the flu, then that's the whole thing. one of the things that was most confounding about this flu, other than like how many people were just fucking dying, was that, so like the normal flu like curve of deaths is like it looks like a U shape. So if it was like how many people die on going up and down on the y-axis, and age on the x-axis going across, so that like usually very, very young children and babies and very, very old people die the most, and then in the middle it's the least number of deaths. But for this one, it was like upside down.
Yeah, elderly and children survived at a greater rate than people 20 to 40. Which
is crazy.
But they think it's because of something known as a cytokine storm. It's that the healthiest people have the healthiest immune systems, and healthy immune systems do what they call a cytokine storm when something's invading it, and it's basically a nuclear attack on the virus.
Yes.
And basically their own immune systems killed them.
Yeah, which is
and they think that because the children and the elderly had less developed or developing immune systems, that's why they had a greater survival rate.
Yes. So there were, the theories were like maybe old people had residual immunity from similar viruses in the past.
Because the last outbreak was what, 1890 of the swine flu, or the kung fu flu, or the whatever they called it back then. They had another name for the flu in 1890.
Of course they did.
Hong Kong flu.
You know what? And you would just, you know what? Never mind.
But they think that the elderly might have had some residual immunity from being through that last outbreak in 1890. Young, otherwise healthy people had such good immune systems. They were too good. Yep. And they killed them.
And so killed them. Just so fucked up. I didn't even know bodies could do that, first of all, until the other day. What the hell?
Me either. When he said, okay, well, their immune systems killed them, I'm like, what? It's like a all-on like nuclear attack on the virus. That throws everything at it.
It's just like when I found out that basically the common cold, the symptoms that we get are really just our immune system overreacting to something that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's what allergies are. That's the reason I have my asthma and my hay fever. It's because my body's overreacting to an irritant. So I have to kind of calm down my own immune system to not suffocate during an asthma attack.
So dramatic.
I know.
Dramatic immune system.
I know.
Like, what is that, pollen? I must take to my bed. You know what? That's how I'm going to think about it from now on, and it's going to make me feel less bad when my allergies suck. I have like
this
mild to moderate allergies all year long that spike periodically to real bad.
Yeah, that's the way mine are. But you just imagine this Karen with a glass of wine and the manager. I'm going to speak to your manager haircut. Pollen?
In my nasal cavities? and then instead of like, I don't know, doing anything to fix it, it just falls on her fainting couch.
Yeah.
And then you have to give your immune system some smelling salt. It's your immune system calling the police on someone having a barbecue in a bar.
Yeah. Do you know what they're doing?
The worst. All right. So we got all these boat people not doing good.
Right. And then they get to France, which is where the majority of World War I was fought, into trench warfare, which is a whole other ecosystem in itself.
Yes.
The filth found in trenches, human, animal, every bit of excrement you can think of is there, dead bodies, blood. And so the flu had a heyday. It ran through the American troops, the French troops, the British troops, and then they took it home and gave it to the civilians. And then you had the outbreak in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it called the Spanish flu? Because Spain
Yes.
got hit the hardest,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the only one that was still neutral in World War One.
Yep.
So their government were not suppressing their media to not report on the flu.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
so
I think that
that's
the lesson we can learn from that is you should definitely just censor the media. Because if you don't, then you might get blamed for a flu epidemic.
exactly. So
I'm just kidding, in case anyone was unclear about that.
well, so to sum that up, Spain's not at war, so Spain lets their press have true freedom of the press and report on the truth, whereas
Mm-hmm.
both the Allies, and by that time it had gotten to the German army as well. They called it from British and French prisoners of war. It was starting to run through German army too, and then the Ottoman army, and then everybody had it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, because they were at war, they didn't want anything distracting from the war message. You know, let's get them happy
Dude.
times. Let's get them. They didn't want anything distracting from that, so they suppressed their media's coverage of the flu epidemic.
Let me
Where
tell
Spain
you.
did not. And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
called the Spanish flu. Everybody thought it started there and was a uniquely Spanish problem because they were the only ones reporting on it.
Oh, what a nightmare. Another great example of messaging over facts is in Philadelphia.
Yes, when the flu made its way back. See, the flu died down for a couple of months in the summer. And then in September, we had a Norwegian, not Norwegian cruise line, but a ship from Norway.
Okay.
Cruise ship came back across the country, across the Atlantic, bringing a new supercharged form of the same flu back to the United States.
So exciting.
Again, ships.
I'm just saying, like, boat travel
Yeah.
should not exist. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But, okay, just a pin in that real quick. There is a cruise ship that left March 15th that came back now with a bunch of sick people on it. Who the fuck was getting on a cruise ship on March 15th?
The ones that
Who
wanted to dock in Miami.
the fuck
And
was getting on a cruise ship, 3 weeks ago? That's crazy.
when the governor of Florida is saying, I'm sorry, you can dock, but nobody can get off the ship. Why? Because we got enough cases here. Miami has enough cases. You can dock the ship. We can send you some food and stuff, but you stay on the ship.
I'm just saying, you know that it's bad when Florida is like, actually, that's too much for us.
Yeah. When a man from Florida raises both his hands and says, stop.
And says, wow,
enough.
This is crazy.
There's not enough bath salts in the world.
No, I suppose there aren't. No, but anyway, so yes, the ship from Norway, again, boats.
Yep. Brought back a supercharged, mutated form of this virus, which was like that first wave, even though it killed a lot of people, was mild compared to the second wave.
Yes. So actually,
it hit in the fall of 1918.
So can I talk a little bit right now about RNA viruses like the flu and the flu in general? So, okay. So the flu virus is an RNA virus, which means that it has RNA instead of DNA like people's have. There are proteins on the outside of the virus. Like we've all seen the pictures now of like the 𝗪𝗪-2 thing that has like the spiky things on the outside.
Yeah, it has two types of spikes on it. One's an enzyme and one's an actual like spike. So.
Yes, so it's like that they're on the outside of the flu virus. There are ones that are called H and there are ones that are called N on our flu viruses. So there are up to 16 different kinds of H proteins and 9 N proteins. And they like mix and match to make different strains of the flu. So,
and that's where H1N1 comes from, people.
yes. So like
Knowledge.
H1N1 or whatever. So, okay. So, because it's the first H and the first N together. So, there are two ways that viruses like that can become different.
Mhm.
One of them is called antigen, or I'm sorry, the proteins on the outside are called antigens. So that those are what your body recognizes and attacks.
Cytokine storms.
Yeah. So that's what the antigens, or those proteins on the outside, are what make your body go, hold up, something's wrong.
Yep.
I need to try to fight this. Okay, so there's antigenic drift. Too Fast, Too Furious.
No.
Antigenic drift.
Yep.
So RNA viruses replicate a lot. And the faster that something replicates, the more likely it is that there's going to be a mistake in the replication, which would change those proteins just a little bit. And that makes it harder for our bodies to recognize because it looks different than it did before. But then the other way is antigenic shift. And that is when an animal, typically, usually like a pig or a bird, so like swine flu or avian flu, gets infected with two different kinds of flu virus. And then the H from one of the viruses and the N from the other, like, get together. So suppose you had H2N2 and H4N4, one pig gets both of them, and then you come out with H2N4.
Correct.
For instance. So that makes a huge difference, a huge shift. And they're saying the likelihood is that antigenic shift happened to cause that second wave as opposed to antigenic drift. So because there is some evidence that people who had been infected in the first wave had some immunity to the new virus, which would not have been the case if it was an entirely new virus.
Exactly.
From drift.
Exactly.
So was that clear at all?
It was very clear. And I was going to ask, what about your opinion on the theory that perhaps soldiers that had been exposed to mustard gas in the field during World War I, that had the flu, that might have caused a mutation? Did you find anything on that?
No. What a fascinating theory, though.
I know. I that was in a couple of the lectures that I listened to. They didn't really go into it, so something else, but there hasn't been a whole lot of research into it. But
yeah, I feel like that would have been more of an antigenic drift situation, where you still, like it's still H2N2, but just like a little different because of mistakes in replication.
Exactly.
Who knows? I'm talking out of my ass fully. Just in case anyone was wondering, I do not know what I'm talking about, and I am not a doctor. I do know that what I just told you about antigenic drift and shift is correct.
Because you heard it, because we wrote it down when a microbiologist said it.
Yes, because a person who does know what they're talking about said it, and I took notes. Anyway,
okay. So the ship in Norway,
wave.
They disembark in New York, infect the city of New York. Then we pick up with Philadelphia. Well, actually, before Philadelphia, let's talk about the attack. It went from New York to Boston, where it infected 1,543 soldiers, including most of the medical staff at Camp Devens in Boston.
Yeah, Camp Devens.
Camp Devens. It pretty much killed that camp.
Yeah.
It then made its way over to Illinois, where it, because of troop movements again, we're still moving troops all over the country and all over Europe. So trains.
We learned nothing.
Right. Trains and boats. Let's just cram them all in big metal compartments. And it made its way to Camp Grant in Rockford, Illinois, where over 4,000 people died. The Public Health Department in Illinois warned the camp commander, Dr. Charles Hagedorn, to not ship any more troops out. They said it was too dangerous. He said, nope, we got to keep the war effort moving. He sent troops to 3,100 troops to Camp Hancock in Georgia. 2,000 of that 3,100 died. No, excuse me. 2,000 of that 3,100 got it. 10% of them died. And Hagedorn committed suicide as a result of the shame from that.
But he didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything. He was following orders. He just did not. He was following his general's orders, not not what Dr. Walsh and the public health department was telling him. And he spread it around all up and down the East Coast. And then we get to Philadelphia.
Where
September 1918.
The head of the health department or whatever. Yeah,
the director of public health for the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you. I said my notes say the lead health guy, which didn't. I have all that information about how flu viruses mutate. No information about that.
He was honest, they say, but he was new at the job and really afraid to make any waves because the mayor, the other city council members of the city of Philadelphia, again, mood over facts.
Yes.
They refused to quarantine people.
He was like, I can't cancel this parade.
Liberty lounge. You got to get
public morale is the most important thing.
And you got to war bonds.
So they had the fucking parade. And again, just to circle back around to the point that you are contagious before you look or feel sick with the flu. So let's pack a bunch of people in, be like, hey guys, pretend like you're on a boat. It's a parade. And everybody
packs in
and breathes on each other and hugs and experiences great morale. Within a couple of days of the parade,
thousands of people are sick.
Everybody is sick.
Because the conditions in Philadelphia was already an overcrowded city.
Yes.
It was the hub of manufacturing for World War I. Lots of people moved in and out. There wasn't enough housing. People lived in what they called flop houses, whereas you had a room of beds, and first shift workers would be at work. You had people that worked night shift sleeping in the beds. First shift workers come home, they get up and go to work. First shift workers lay right back down in those beds with the same sheets and everything. You had people using communal outhouses and alleys. I mean, just think of the most filthy conditions. Liken it to what happened in during the Black Death in the Middle Ages. That kind of filth. And you also had standards that were spitting in public was encouraged because people really believed that you made yourself well by spitting. So people walked up and down the streets just spit, 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 spit. So you can imagine how quickly this ran through the city.
Ultimately, a lot of anti-spitting laws were put on the books in response to all of this. But
exactly.
So at one point, Philadelphia had 759 deaths in one day, which means nothing out of context. But for some context, on average, every week they had about 485 deaths from everything, from being old to other illnesses,
shooting,
whatever. Was in a week was about 485 deaths on average. So one day, 300-ish additional deaths.
Yep.
In one day.
Hospitals overcrowded. Mortuaries overcrowded. There wasn't enough coffins. There wasn't enough undertakers. And you had the Catholic Church actually doing some good and stepping in. And you had priests actually digging mass graves in potter's fields, buying potter's fields, digging mass graves, putting people in there, actually taking notes, careful notes of where people were buried. And then having dirt just pushed in over them so they could come back later and exhume them and bury them properly when all this is over.
It's
think of the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages.
It's crazy. And it was, I mean, we're talking just over 100 years ago, just not even that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
14,000 people in a city of probably 30,000, 40,000 died from this in just about 3 to 4 weeks.
Yes. So anyway, in all of his wisdom, like you said, maybe he was a good guy that just was trying not to make waves. Who's to say? He had some great ideas about how to avoid the flu, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like not talking about it.
Yeah. Not writing about, burying it on the last page of the newspaper.
Yes. Drinking alcohol.
Yep. Left the bars open until it was determined that they were a cause of infection.
And of course, above all, cheer for your country.
Yeah.
And that will help you avoid the flu. So.
Yeah.
And I guess spitting too. I didn't have that on my list.
Well, you also had people living with dead bodies. I mean, they literally, if you were wealthy enough to have a second room where you could seal them off, that was great. But more likely, you wrapped them in a sheet, left them in a corner of a room, or put them out back. Literally, you even had funeral homes that would bring a coffin and leave it on your porch and tell you to put your dead in it, and they would come back and get it. I can't even imagine that today.
No.
102 years ago.
Although that is how I've been getting my pizza recently. Just leave it on the porch.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same. Not really at all. That's insensitive of me.
Let's not make that a trend. Doorstep.
No, let's not.
Doorstep, burial. Let's not make that a.
Jeez, Pete. Ridiculous.
Hospitals overrun, not enough doctors because they had all been drafted by the Army. So you had medical schools, much the same as now, 3rd and 4th year medical students coming in to help. You had nursing students. Really, the Red Cross was signing up anybody that was able-bodied to be a nurse, because nursing care at that time, this is before Florence Nightingale. It was after Florence Nightingale, excuse me. Nursing care at that time was comfort care.
Yes.
They just, gave people baths, made them comfortable, used various salve, effervescents you treated symptoms.
Given the state of medical doctoring at the time, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Right. I mean, you had them mixing like turpentine with petroleum jelly and calling that a treatment and rubbing it on people. I mean, just like weird stuff. Weird stuff, yeah.
And the fumes might make you a little high.
Yeah. It might make you feel better.
Weirdly, I do feel better.
Yeah.
Ooh, I can't remember what day it is, but I feel great.
But so yes, the Red Cross was actively signing up anybody that would want to be a nurse, unless you were black. I
mean,
well, I guess standard. I'm just like, but the thing of it is, there was a black nursing corps that did wonderful things. But they were only allowed to care for other black people when we were desperately short of nurses. What the hell were they thinking?
It's every time you hear some sort of like heartwarming thing that happened again, let's be honest, not even that far away past.
Yeah.
You're always like, oh, everybody got to be and everyone was banding together. Oh, except for black people. Oh, okay. There's always something. There's always something there at the end. I was like, well,
yeah,
that was a cute story until it wasn't anymore.
The Red Cross had a black nursing corps that won awards, did wonderful things, but they would only allow them to cure for other black people or do support work for the white nurses. And so lots of people went without care because there wasn't enough nurses, yet you had 1,000 other nurses over here
because
their skin's darker than yours.
Can't get over.
Yeah.
Even in times of crisis, can't get over their own fucking racist tendencies.
Yeah. I just thought I'd throw that in there. That was just 100 years ago, folks.
Which is, you know what, I feel like to any person of color in this country, not shocking at all. It's just you.
But I am encouraged. I am encouraged though today in the modern pandemic, we've got the head of infectious disease from 𝗥𝗏𝗄𝗏, which is a historically black medical school, on television with our mayor here in Nashville, giving his speeches and being the go-to expert on this thing. And you see how far we have come in 100 years. It makes you feel good.
We got a
long way to go, but we've come a long way.
We gotta hold on to something. for sure. So yeah, now I didn't get too deep into this, but in contrast to Philadelphia, it sounds like St. Louis
Mhm.
was the anti-Philadelphia.
Yep, they did everything right, and so did
And-
San Francisco, California.
And did
Actually,
and that they were like, oh, huh,
stay at home.
maybe, yeah, maybe people shouldn't be like crowded in the streets coughing on each other, and stay home, and we'll just ride it out. And then they did.
Yep, those two cities
And
had fewer deaths and fewer infections than any other cities in America.
Samoa, I have the thing, 90% of German Samoa was infected. And then as far as deaths, it was 30% of men, 20% of women, and 10% of kids on the island died.
Wow.
And that's kind of the difference between islands, right? Because they're so isolated that it's like either you can shut it down and everything's cool, or it's like,
Because you have no immunities.
it's like a
because you're-
cruise ship made of land.
Exactly, and you also have
We're all there, yeah.
an Inuit or native population that has never been exposed to any other
Yes. So
Western disease, so they have no immunities. The same thing happened with the Inuits of Alaska,
yes, there
Canada.
were
Huge amount of deaths.
entire Alaskan villages completely off the map.
Yep.
Now, speaking of Alaska, so just recently, and they say in the past 10 or 15 years, they didn't have a specific date that this happened. Scientists have been able to conclusively determine that it was H1N1 that caused this. And they did that by traveling to Alaska, exhuming bodies of flu victims who had been buried in the permafrost. They sampled their lung tissue and found the RNA in there, because since it's the permafrost, everything deteriorates much more slowly. So they were able to do that and then recreate the flu virus, at which point they infected monkeys, which is a different discussion.
A whole other set of it.
A whole other set of things. And then those monkeys died similarly to people in 1918. Now, so that was an H1N1.
So an avian flu.
I don't know.
Because that still hasn't been, there's still some people say swine, some people say avian, some people say it's a hybrid.
So I think that the difference between avian or swine might have more to do with reservoir animal than with the specific protein. So I bet an H1N1 could be either swine or avian. It just depends on
bat or what
right,
snake.
it just depending on which like reservoir animal it originated from.
Because you have hosts and vectors. You know, vectors are the things that get sick that actually allow it to pass from thing to thing, and then you have hosts, which usually have symptoms, and they just carry the virus.
Yeah.
Until it makes a jump, and then
which is super common in bats and pigs and birds are very, very common.
Yep.
Reservoir animals for spillover events is what that's called when it infects people. But so fascinatingly, the 2009 flu shot included H1N1 1918 variant.
Oh, wow. Wow.
After they were able to isolate that from the lung tissue of flu victims in Alaska. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I thought that was
that is crazy. It's just amazing because this killed, like I said, probably a third of the world's population. And the thing of it is symptoms that people had never seen before. I mean, people would get it and drop dead 12 hours later, depending on their viral load. 12 hours later. And so it really has to do, I think, with viral load. And my mother-in-law, who's actually a researcher, has said that that's true of most viruses. You have people that have a small viral load that have mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. And then you have people that are just exposed to it constantly.
Like healthcare workers. So it's a reason why healthcare workers oftentimes
die.
will die at a higher rate
Right.
than others, which is fucked up in its own way.
Right, because a lot of the people that died in 12 hours were nurses that would just collapse and be gone. And the thing of it is, when they did autopsies, the doctors like Dr. Walsh, who was actually at Camp Devens when it broke out, was actually doing autopsies. He said that it's relayed that he said that when he opened up the body, there were, you know, the lungs were completely filled with blood, and there were air pockets under the skin.
Yes, that was so. They said as they moved sick people or bodies, it made a crackling sound, like not unlike Rice Krispies.
Exactly, and there's two technical names for that. I learned it's called subcutaneous emphysema is one name for it.
Okay.
And I think the much more fun name, if there can be a fun name, is crepitus. It sounds like a warning that, you know, I don't know, the Wandering Wizard would give a hobbit, you know, beware the crepitus.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, beware the crepitus.
Yeah, but it's basically the lungs have microscopic holes, air fills the skin, and when you turn people, the nurses said when they turned people, they would hear what that sounded like rice cereal.
Rice Krispies. Some nurses were saying they could never eat Rice Krispies again after.
Yeah. And lots of times they were so overwhelmed, especially in Philadelphia, that when a person started having the crepitus, or their fingertips started to turn blue, the telltale signs that you were about to expire.
Hypoxia, yeah.
They would tag your toe for the morgue immediately. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Because it saved time.
Oh my God, Tracy, that's the most
most horrible thing I've ever heard.
Oh my God. I don't like that at all.
But that's what some of the nurses in Philadelphia said that they were ordered to do, is to go ahead and tag them for the morgue once they started obviously being an end stage symptoms.
What the hell?
I know. Because it saved time and allowed them to concentrate on the people that might pull through.
Tracy, that's horrible.
I know.
I don't like that at all.
I don't either.
I don't like that one bit.
I don't either, because one nurse said she often sat and thought, she was like 60 when she told the story, but she said she would sit and think, what must it be like to be that person that sees a morgue tag on your toe?
On your own foot.
Yeah.
It's just like why am I such a bad person? I don't know. But I am, and here we are. It's just like that Monty Python sketch when they're like, bring out your dad. And the guy's like, I'm not dead yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, yeah, but like soon enough. And he's like, no, I'm still alive.
Yeah, that is kind of like, exactly. How do you know she's a witch? Look at her nose. You know, it's just like,
but I'm still alive. I don't need a morgue tag. I'm alive. And they're like, yeah, well, check out those fingernails.
But I'm alive. I'm a stubborn ass, so I would like to think that if they did that to me, I'd stay alive just to
out of spite, just fully out of spite.
Nothing but freaking spite.
It's fully out of spite. Good. I can't even imagine. I don't even want to. It really is upsetting. It's serious.
But by and large, finally by December of 1918.
Yeah.
It had run its course. The deadly second wave had run its course. And we were more still concentrating on World War I. Then in February of 1919, you had President Woodrow Wilson and many other diplomats in France for the peace talks. And wave number 3 broke out, which was a lot less deadly than wave number 2.
Yes.
And in fact, both Woodrow Wilson and his daughter became infected with it.
So there's some speculation that Woodrow Wilson's personality changed considerably as a result of that particular bout of influenza. And that evidence of that, they say, is in sort of the demands and whatnot that he made of.
Yep. He spent a lot of time obsessing over who was using what government equipment, over who was where and when. They said that he wouldn't sleep, he wouldn't eat, he just sat in his chair sweating and talking gibberish lots of times. And they said that even after physical symptoms had left, he was still left with what would be now called PTSD.
Okay.
Forever
Yeah.
altered. And a lot of people had neurological damage and lung damage as a result of it.
It doesn't surprise me. Also, they say that that particular the flu virus aided in an Ally victory in World War I because the Allies got hit later.
They did. The German army picked it up really quick from prisoners of war. Again, just like the colonel in the Illinois fort that wouldn't listen to the army doctors. The commander-in-chief of the Kaiser's forces also did not listen and went ahead with his fall offensive and pretty much infected his entire unit and lost the war as a result. I'm just not having enough men to fight.
So, hooray? I don't know. There's no good news. There's no good news.
Actually, a precursor to that, it was along this time that the Kaiser of Germany and this general actually released an exiled Bolshevik from Germany back into Russia by the name of Vladimir Urinsky Lenin back into Russia, and so started the Russian Revolution as a result, direct result of this flu epidemic. Because
it's so fascinating.
Because they wanted a quick end to the war. They saw themselves losing, and they figured if they could get Russia to stop fighting, that they would have a chance. So they released Lenin back into Russia to deal with the Tsar and stop the war. And that part worked, but the influenza still lost them the war.
Still persisted, yes. When all was said and done, about 28% of the United States had been infected. What was the number that you had? I had 675,000 deaths.
I got 695,000.
Okay.
In the United States.
In today's people, that would be like percentage-wise of current population, that would be over 1,750,000 deaths.
Yeah.
In the United States alone.
From the flu, people. So you see when people say, "Oh, it's just a flu," that shouldn't necessarily make you feel bad, because this was just a flu too.
And
there was actually a children's rhyme that went around at this time. Girls and boys that were jump roping or skipping rope, they would sing, "I had a little bird and her name was Enza. I opened up the window and influenza." That was an actual rhyme that children sang while they were jump roping during this era.
Cool.
No,
cool.
Not cool.
Not cool. No.
It's kind of like the origins of Ring Around the Rosie.
Yeah, Ring Around the Rosie. Jesus.
Also another plague in Europe.
Yes. Also another plague in Europe. Another very fascinating plague in Europe as well.
Yeah, the bubonic. The Black Death. Maybe we'll do the Black Death.
So it wasn't all bubonic even.
No, it was pneumonic and septicemic too.
And pneumonic is the one that's actually the most deadly, I believe.
Yeah, it kills you in hours, whereas bubonic would take weeks, and septis would kill you really quickly because it was poison in the blood.
There's a whole two-parter of this podcast will kill you about it. That's really excellent.
Yeah.
Well, did we learn anything as a people from this?
I think we've done better than the people of 1918 did about press coverage and locking down is earlier than we normally would have. I think a lot of our leaders maybe did err on trying not to cause a panic at first. But now they've realized the seriousness of it, and maybe we all should be sheltering in place. But I'm also glad that, and I say a big thank you to all medical workers, firemen, policemen, grocery store workers, delivery people, anybody, stockers, cleaners, the people that still pick up my garbage every week. I say a very great thank you to you guys, because unlike the lockdowns they had in 1918, where there was food shortages were a huge problem then, because the grocery stores closed and the supply chain was down.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody that's keeping the supply chain going right now, so that you
Yeah.
and I can sit here and bitch on the internet about stuff and still drink our coffee or our tea, or
Which is
yeah.
Which is what's getting me through.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. Thanks to all of them. I know that
Truck drivers, I forgot to
our
mention.
thanks don't help that much in a real way, but
they should all be getting hazard pay.
absolutely. So it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah.
God. Well, anyway, the thing about this flu is that it all happened in less than a year, really.
Yeah. Gone.
The big part of it, just huge and terrible, and then gone.
And this flu was also a coronavirus. Any of the viruses that have had the spikes.
Is it influenza coronavirus?
Most flus are coronaviruses because of the spikes. They name it after a crown, coronavirus. So coronavirus isn't a joke. It's no joke.
No, it certainly isn't. And the reason that, like, the common cold and stuff, which is for sure a coronavirus, is so mild and whatever, is because it's been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So what tends to happen with these coronaviruses is, as they persist and they become less virulent over time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I mean,
most viruses ecologically do not evolve to kill their host. No parasite, will evolve to kill its host, because if it does, they die. So they will all evolve backwards the longer they stay around and get milder and milder. But what we're having to face now, just like they did in 1918, is a brand new novel coronavirus. Brand new.
Right. And so we don't know what to do. Like, our bodies don't have a good template of how to fight it.
And will there be a second wave of this? It's definitely possible that summer heat will kill it out, and then it'll be back in fall. But hopefully we'll have a treatment by then. If not a vaccine, but a treatment.
Yeah. We'll see. I think as it stands, unfortunately, we're probably fall again. But I don't even want to think about that right now.
I just want to get through this wave and maybe get back to some sort of normalized summer.
Some sort of normalcy. What do you what's like one stupid thing that you miss the most about normal life?
Well, I rarely left the house anyway, but now that I can't, because I'm just a hermit except for comedy shows and whatnot, but I think just the fact now that I can't leave the house. My family will not let me even go to do our grocery store pickups, every 2 weeks, because I'm an asthmatic and they're afraid if I catch it, I'm in a high risk category.
That feels wise.
Yeah, it does. And I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all.
Yeah.
But I just miss, now that I'm not allowed to leave the neighborhood. I want to leave the neighborhood. Whereas before I didn't want to. It's kind of that fear of missing out,
FOMO. Mine is just wandering around Costco.
Yeah.
I know that's the most suburban white lady answer, but
no, I mean they build that. They lay out, Sam's Club and Costco lay out their stores so that you do want to wander. Nothing's in the same place ever.
It's not even buying things from Costco necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just going through the aisles and just being like, oh, that's fun. Oh, look at that.
Yeah. And before you could eat lunch there because there was always free samples.
And then they stopped that.
It makes me wonder what post-corona world, post-COVID world is going to be like. Is that stuff going to come back? Are we going to, is there still going to be all this?
They better figure out a way.
Yeah.
Because I would be real mad.
Exactly.
But that's part of they better charge me less money for my Costco membership if they're not going to give me samples.
Exactly.
All I'm saying, that's part of the perks. I don't know. been very funny, like watching movies and TV for us.
Yeah.
As you're like, whoa, that's a lot of people in that. Oh, right. Oh, right. That was back when people were allowed to hang out.
Yeah. And just catching up. I mean, I've watched stuff that I never got to see what was on. Like we just finished The Sopranos not long ago, and I was just like, I'm like bitching about the ending of Sopranos when for everybody else it's like,
like 12 years later, or
12
whatever.
years ago.
I don't know how long ago The Sopranos ended.
And,
a long time ago.
And then, you know, so I'm getting to see stuff I never saw before. Because literally we're binge watching. Even when I'm working, like I'm still blessed enough to have both my jobs, but they were both work from home anyway. But I'm, you know, working all day and the television's on in the background, so I'm getting to watch all this stuff, and it's just. And my mother-in-law's working from home, my wife's working from home, so we're just binge watching constantly. Thank goodness for Comcast waiving the data caps during this thing.
Right. and for just streaming services in general, without which, can you imagine doing this in like 1995?
Nope. With nothing but
what a nightmare.
With nothing but a collection of VHS tapes and a VCR
and some of those hit clips, those little hit clips that played 45 seconds of a song.
And what's on cable?
We didn't even have cable. Like, I don't want to watch Bob Ross again.
No.
Anyway. Well.
And I hope everybody learned something. I did. And we'll be back soon with hopefully we'll do something a little more fun next time. We'll come
I feel like this was not the most hilarious of the ones we've done, although
I feel like it's something people need to know about.
It is though. And I think maybe if we weren't in the midst of a global pandemic, it might have been more fun to talk about.
Definitely. Definitely.
In the current context.
Because during all my research, I'm comparing what they did to what we're doing now.
No, exactly. Which is, I watched a little YouTube. I think it was one of the animated ones that you were talking about. And I was just like, oh God. Oh.
We just did that. No.
I was like, no. It was very hurtful. But anyway, we did it.
Yep, we did.
What do people want to hear? If people have requests for things.
Yeah. Guys and girls, let us know below what you want to hear. What topic would you want us to hear? It can be true crime. It can be weird history, which this definitely falls in line with my weird history series. It can be really anything. I have a cult series. You know, we can talk about cults if you want. Just let us know.
I love some good cult talk.
Yeah. Let us know down below, and we'll take a poll, and we'll come up with something more fun next time.
Yes. Also, can I plug something?
Go for it.
While I'm here. In my isolation time, my husband and I have been making some content. We released a video last week, maybe. It's on YouTube. Make Better Decisions is our YouTube channel, and the video is called Big Yellow Boyfriend. And
I saw that.
And everybody should watch it.
If you didn't know, Michelle and her husband Zach have a show on Nashville Public Radio.
We don't anymore. Actually,
don't know anymore. Well, they did have a show on Nashville Public Radio, which is now on YouTube.
Radio Free Nashville, but now we're doing some YouTube stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, please go watch our video.
Send me the link, and I will link it below.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and I'll see everyone later. If you want to support the channel or the podcast, there are links below. But the best way you can support is to like, comment, share, and tell your friends about it.
Yes. Until next time.
We're out.
Bye.
Bye.